Welcome, everyone. We are live. My name is Doug Cothe, and I am a principal consultant and founder of PeopleSmart Group, as well as the founder of the Organizational Health Collective. Now I'm here with my friend Terry.
I'm Dr. Terry Wager, and what it says on my thing is I'm a principal consultant with Generator Group and member of the Organizational Health Collective as well. So if those people who are looking couldn't read that, I just read it for you.
Nice. And what do we do here, Terry?
We are talking about organizational health and helping people kind of understand more what it is.
Yep.
And we want businesses to really have an understanding that organizational health is the greatest multiplier of their business results. And we also want to expose more consultants to what we do as organizational health consultants and invite them to be a part of our group.
Yeah, fantastic. And that's the Organizational Health Collective. You see the link up top there. And monthly we have gatherings. Our next one is on April 3rd. And we are currently in a series on business development. And so that is helping consultants and practitioners think through how do they develop their business and how they develop with clients. And so that could be both external and internal, because internal practitioners are also have clients. They're just inside the business and rather than outside.
Absolutely. So. And, it's April 3rd that's happening. I think we have that date, right? This time.
Yep. We do this time. Yeah.
Like a little faux pas the last time. But the reality is when I heard that it was April 3rd, it was just after our last one, which was March 4th. And I was like, can we just do it tomorrow? Because that topic is so insanely helpful. Really understanding how to put yourself out there and how to present yourself to your client in a sales conversation, in your marketing and all of that. And I think that's one of the biggest things we all need is to understand more of how to present ourselves to that potential client.
Yeah. Yeah. The main theme there is going to be how to take a discovery call and turn that into a really impactful engagement. And so I would encourage you to come on out and join us for that. You will see on the Organizational Health Collective LinkedIn page, we will have a link up there to register, to go to the Zoom page and register for that. So come on out and join us. And so we're going to jump in today with a question for us, Terry, like we like to start personally. So what, in your experience, is the underlying building block of organizational health?
For me, the underlying building block of everything is vulnerability-based trust. And when I talk about that, I am not talking about trusting the other people. It's really trusting myself that I can be vulnerable without falling apart or without blowing up when somebody calls me out on something. And so really for me, and I'm an organizational psychologist and psychology to the bone. And so when I really think about these things, I think about the person themselves before the group. And so for me, when I'm looking at that vulnerability-based trust, it's really the ability for me to trust in the process, have faith in the world around me, that I'm okay, and that I can say what I'm thinking without either being attacked. And if I'm being attacked, it's not because they don't agree with me, it's because they're having a problem. And I can still be okay after that. And I don't need to melt into a pile of goo around, oh no, somebody didn't agree with me. That's really what I'm talking about. Vulnerability-based trust is the ability to trust myself that I can voice my opinion and voice where I'm coming from without due aggression or rejection or things like that. That's kind of where I'm coming from with it.
I like that, Jerry. I like that because we have to do the work ourselves on ourselves to be able to engage in that trusting manner with other people. And so I like where you're starting there, that it starts with us first. There's no way to have others trust us or even us trust others without trusting ourselves to say, hey, I can actually offer up of myself. I can be vulnerable with other people, and I'm not going to sit here and worry about what other people think.
Yeah. And I think that the next step is if I am worrying about what they think, what's going on with me instead of what are they doing?
Right.
Because my natural tendency, and I mean, I come up with a lot of my psychological stuff thinking about how I was when I wasn't necessarily psychologically balanced, and I wasn't really making good choices, and I was destroying relationships and things because I was playing their side of it. And so it's that, what are they trying to do, and trying to guess what they're trying to do instead of open up and be vulnerable about it.
That's good. That's good. And so you're constantly trying to play through your mind. And what's the emotions or what's the thought process of the other person?
What's Doug thinking right now? I gotta guess. And we're playing chess in our mind instead of having a conversation. It really doesn't help.
That's good. And then as I think about it, because I would agree that at the heartbeat, at the underlying building block is that trust. And so I'll take it the next step, because I love where you started on the internal of your individual self, and then I'll take it to the interpersonal level. Is that vulnerability-based trust is not, when we talk about that, it's not the, hey, I can trust you based upon your track record, because, hey, you've done this before, so I can trust you because you'll do it again. It's actually, no, I am willing to reveal of myself. And it has to start, not usually, it starts with the leader being willing to lay out their cards of, hey, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses, hey, I struggled with that, hey, this didn't go the way I'd hoped, where they're willing to be open in the work environment with, hey, you know what, I'm not perfect, guess what, I'm a human being, and they're real and candid about who they are. And it's that openness that allows other people to feel open, and then we can be honest with one another, and we can have that open dialogue and that's what we mean by that vulnerability-based trust, that it's, when you're open with me, I can be open with you. And I'm not going to fear that when I reveal my weakness, you're going to use that as to step on to get to the next level, or to step on to bring me down so you can move up. You're going to you're for me. We're for one another. We're on each other's team. We're trying to build each other up.
Absolutely. And it really, for me, it really dives into the idea of curiosity. And we all have, we want to approach these things from a curious place and an empathic place. And I actually have, I keep saying place, but I have an acronym place that I learned a long, long time ago when I was using attachment-based psychology with severely emotionally disturbed kids. And it stands for playful, which does not mean playing with them or making fun of people, but it means playful about me and my foibles and my fears, and, you know, not taking myself so seriously. And then the L stands for loving. And really what it's talking about is being compassionate and being really focused on what's the best for everyone. And then the A is accepting of the situation as it is. C is curious and being curious about the other people and what's going on with them. And then empathic is kind of, I mean, straight up, not kind of, I don't know where that popped out from, but empathic is really being able to identify the emotions in the other people's behavior that they might be feeling, and asking from that curious place about where they're at. And when we can use that place, we actually develop a bond between each other to connect and to be more vulnerable and to get into what the disagreements are and to really understand the opinions, the emotions, the perspectives of the people in the room. And when we can do that, it's great. And I see amazing progress when we're doing that. Sometimes you don't want to do that.
Right. Right. Yeah, for sure. Well, and that sounds like a helpful tool for other people to use to think through his place.
Oh, absolutely.
How can I think this through in the moment where I'm trying to engage and connect and not get overly caught up in what are other people thinking of me.
And for me, it's the foundation of vulnerability-based trust. It's the attitude of place. And we want to walk in with an attitude of place when we're trying to create, or when we're trying to retool our group into a vulnerability-based trust group.
Do you use that with leaders, Terry, when you're prepping them?
I use it with everybody. And I just start off by making fun of myself. And then, you know, all of a sudden I'm starting with P, you know, and I make light of myself. You know, like I did here when I was reading my name, and I'm just reading it for you because, well, I don't remember who I am really. But and so it's having that sense of humor, and even if I'm not really that funny, and I'm probably not, but my ego thinks I'm very funny, but I'm probably not that funny. But as long as I'm attempting humor about me, it you know, people say it disarms other people. I don't think it disarms them. I think it allows them to let go of their armor.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And
Yep.
so we let go of our armor when people are being silly, or even if they're being dorky. It's like, okay, that guy's a dork. He's not a threat. Yep, I'm a dork. All right, let's talk.
Right. Yep.
Armor.
Yeah. I don't need to protect myself. I'm good.
Yeah.
That's helpful. Yeah. And so today it's really helpful as we talk about that as the foundation. We are rolling in today to today's episode. We're focusing on the concept of psychological safety. How is it helpful in the work environment? Ways it may not be. And so start with the first question here. The big
Yeah.
one. Is it all it's cracked up to be?
The question that comes to my mind, and I like, is psychological safety all that safe?
Yeah.
And for me, I got opinions on that, but I'm gonna
Yeah.
let you start off and let you talk for a little bit, and then
Yeah.
I'll add my
Yeah.
42 cents in.
Yeah. Well, so I think it's helpful to put in context the conversation, and so I did a little research to help us with that, just to back it up. I think the phrase was originally coined by Amy Edmondson back in 1999. She was a researcher and professor at Harvard, and so she found the situation where she was doing research on teams and the success of teams, and was surprised to find that teams that had strong teamwork seemed to have more failure. And it shocked her to the degree that she said, this can't be right. And so she dug deeper to figure out that, well, actually, maybe it's that teams that have good teamwork actually are more honest about their failure. And so they reveal it more freely. And so that she began to see that, and then she began to dig deeper and saw, hey, wait, there's some safety here that goes on, that they feel the safety to reveal their failure because of the connectedness of the team, because of the trust of the team, that sort of thing. And so that's where the term psychological safety came out. And then as she defined it, so just that we get the kind of right definition here of where it started, at least, because I think there's, as you and I will talk, I think there's been some ways that it's been used that are different from where she started. And I think the starting place has a really good starting point. And so just the idea that team psychological safety is that really shared belief held by members of a team that it's okay to take risks, it's okay to express their ideas, their concerns, to speak up with one another, have questions, to admit mistakes, all without the fear of negative consequences. To be able to have felt permission is the one way she put it, for candor, to be just candid with one another and honest with one another. And I think that sounds like a great definition. And that sounds very similar to what we talk about with vulnerability.
I was going to say, as you read that definition, it really does sound like more vulnerability-based trust. And where I start to have trouble with the whole idea of psychological safety is, okay, so I've been in the recovery world, and I'm pretty free about opening up and admitting that I've had my troubles with alcohol and drugs and things like that in my younger years, not this week, but I've been 28 years sober, and I've been around a lot of codependents, and I've worked with a lot of codependents and a lot of alcoholism and a lot of drug addiction and that type of thing in my years. I also, like I said earlier, was an attachment psychologist. And one of the things studying attachment, and John Bowlby was the father of attachment. And then he had another lady that worked with him who came up with and noticed that there's styles of attachment. And I'm saying this for a real good reason, I think, at least in my head, it makes sense. But she was noticing the styles of attachment, and then that actually started to morph into some kind of model in itself that we could treat. And it's actually just being able to see the symptoms, but you can't treat symptoms from a model that was looking at the symptoms. You have to look at the thing that caused the symptoms and create a model around that. John Bowlby and a few other attachment psychologists worked on a model to create or repair attachment, but she looked at it as to define attachment style. And this is, I'm bringing it right back around here. And the deal is Edmondson's model that you're talking about is actually very much like Ainsworth with her model of identifying the symptoms as a thing. And so she was saying psychological safety is what we see when vulnerability-based trust is created.
Mm. Yep.
But what people have done is gone, okay, we have to create psychological safety instead of look for it.
Mm.
And what happens is people go to the codependent side of things. And then what happens is, and this is just my opinion, but it might be right. It might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's right. But, you know, argue with me. That's good. Just comments anywhere. Right. But
Yeah.
the idea is when we're all agreeing that we want to have vulnerability-based trust, we're all putting our hand up and doing our part to be vulnerable, to put ourselves out there, to be a part of the solution of. And what I've seen psychological safety turn into over the last, 20 years since she came up with what she came up with is that employees and reports and all of these people working in the system have started looking for the leadership to create this idea of safety, that they can have constant reassurance that they're going to be safe if they say something, instead of creating the safety by creating boundaries emotionally, not just by lines in the sand by saying you can't do that to me. That creates fights, but it's really being able to have the emotional conversation. And what it ended up leading to, in my opinion, is there's more avoidance of accountability because, well, they're supposed to keep me psychologically safe. It's not my own job. And it's very similar to the idea of what we see with bullying these days. And we're supposed to rely on the school system to remove or eradicate bullying.
Right.
But it's each person's individual responsibility to, when they see it, confront it and ask about it. And from a place of loving, curious, empathic acceptance, ask the people who are bullying or ask the people who are boundary violating what's going on with them. But we're too scared to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So it seems like we have thought to create a situation of a certain feeling instead of looking for a character-based focus on seeking the welfare of the other person.
Yeah, I think that, and I'm not sure how this has happened, but I see it in a lot of different things, in the political correctness, and we just can't talk about. I'm probably going to cancel, but we're probably
Yeah, that probably happened a long time ago, Terry. So you're good.
Yeah, 32nd time being canceled, but we tend to back away from confrontation, fearing that people are going to be upset with us instead of getting clarity.
Right.
And so, and we see so many businesses, and I know you go into businesses and you go into churches even, and we go into these different organizations, and everybody is pretending to get along.
Yep.
And they're not really connecting with each other, but they're enduring the meetings and they're enduring what's going on. And I think we're talking about what's going wrong right now is that we're enduring this stuff instead of going in and saying, hey, I don't think this is working the way we want it to.
No. Yeah.
And as soon as I say that, oh God, we need the safety people to come in and cancel him and shut that down so we're all safe again and we don't have to admit. Yeah. And I think I get passionate about this, and you can tell I'm probably a little bit passionate about it, but I get passionate about it because I've watched people do the same thing with drugs and alcohol and kill themselves.
Yeah.
They couldn't admit that they had the problem. They couldn't admit to their partners, or they couldn't admit in their jobs that they were struggling with something, partly because they wanted to keep drinking, because that's the solution they came up with, but or using drugs, but partly because there's such shame around feeling bad. And
Yep.
believe it or not, we actually feel shame. We human beings feel shame when we feel bad.
Yeah.
And so just because I feel bad that you said something, now I'm feeling shameful because I think I should be stronger than that.
Right.
And I was like, no, we got to admit that. We got to talk about it.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
and people don't.
Right. Right. I mean, so vulnerability-based trust would probably move us more in the direction of actually saying, when you said that, it made me feel like you were saying there's something wrong with me and my idea, not just my idea.
Right.
And giving the person the opportunity to go, no, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm seeing some issues with the idea. I love what you did. I'm excited about who you are. This is about the idea.
Right.
And
And
so we put it back out there and throw it back out there and have that opportunity. But if we're all about the feeling and that trumps everything, then we're done right there. Once the feeling arises, it's over.
yeah, and I think that the bigger thing is, and I think this is important. Write this down. I have a coach who used to say that. This is a writer downer. And I love the coach. I just make fun of the voice because all the time. But and it was a woman. But the thing that was really interesting is that we need psychological safety when we haven't created clarity in our group or in our team, and we haven't come up with the ground rules for how we're going to interact,
Hmm.
and we haven't gotten everybody to buy in because we started off with, okay, we're going to have a safe space first instead of creating and making it a safe space.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I keep getting spam phone calls, but it's interesting, like spam.
They know you're talking about this, Terry. They're calling you.
Yeah, exactly. Constant. But it's interesting because they want to put the cart before the horse. And they want to create a safe space, almost like a clean room, so we don't get any germs of human behavior on us. And it's like, look, the human behavior is already there. As soon as we walk in, and in fact, I need psychological safety just for me to walk in my own office all alone. Otherwise, I might get attacked by my ego. And it happens a lot. And so how are we going to create this psychological safety there? It's like, wait a minute, we do it to ourselves.
Yep.
In fact, I would rather be in a room of people who mildly don't like me than me on a bad day. Me by myself on a bad day.
Yeah.
Because I'm meaner than all of them altogether. To me,
Right.
I'm actually very nice to most people. So if I'm not nice to you, sorry. But the reality is that when we're looking at this idea of psychological safety, and I use Tuckman. I don't know if you've ever heard of Tuckman's model of group forming, but it's a forming, storming, norming, and high performing. I put high performing in there. He just says performing. But I always talk about this and help people kind of understand that every group goes through this forming group or forming stage and then storming stage. And the storming stage is where you actually start having the psychological safety created by the vulnerability of the people. But if you, in the forming stage, if part of the forming, you create the structure that you make everybody agree that they're going to be nice to each other, well, now everybody's dominated by the fear of being in trouble if they're not nice. So they don't know how to confront and they don't know how to talk about what's going on. And we didn't come up with it together. So we got to step back into the forming stage and go, okay, part of the forming stage is vulnerability-based trust. And on the other side of it, the norming stage through the storming is going to be a result of psychological safety, or what Amy Edmondson was talking about, which is there will have higher levels of trust, higher levels of buy-in, higher levels of functionality.
Yeah.
And so the psychological safety is a creation of vulnerability-based trust and conflict.
Yeah, but you got to have the conflict in there, right?
So got to have the conflict.
Be able to have that freedom
before you have the safety.
Yep. And so it's interesting. So in my research, I'll take this the next step for you. I found this definition from McKinsey that psychological safety is the absence of interpersonal fear. That seems to leave wide open the door. It's a little too loosey goosey for me, where now all of a sudden I'm fearful of you disagreeing with me. Well,
Well,
isn't that interpersonal fear?
let me
But
ask
don't
you
I
a
need you
question.
to disagree with me if I come up with a bad idea?
Let
Because
me ask you
otherwise,
a
we're going to
question.
go forward with a bad idea in our company and come up with making crap.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me ask you a question, though. This is a question I ask myself all the time. Um, have I ever been absent of fear?
It's a great question.
And no. My answer is, well, I mean, okay, sitting watching TV, sure, okay, maybe, but I'm fearing people aren't thinking of me, because, well, I like that. No, I'm just kidding. But the reality is there's always fear as long as we have our ego or our internal protector, because it's sitting there talking to us, even when we're sleeping, about all of the possible problems of the world. And
Right.
so I would love to see Mackenzie's explanation. I want to know who in Mackenzie actually is that Mackenzie the group or Mackenzie the
McKinsey and
guy?
Company. Yep.
I'd like to have each one of them say where they came up with this idea of the absence of interpersonal fear, because the reality is I've never had it.
Yeah.
I've been going to 12-step meetings and things for absolute years, and every time I walk into a new one, there's fear. Every time I walk into an old one, there's fear that what I'm going to say isn't going to play well, or what I'm
And
going
those
to
are one
say
of the
isn't going to help.
safest places on the planet because they're the most accepting and yeah,
Well, I mean that sort of.
generally. I
I
mean,
mean, okay, so all of that aside, I've been in 12-step meetings where they weren't so healthy, and they
yeah,
threw the drunk in a garbage can, and it was bad. That was in the 80s, but it scared the shit out of me. But oh, that's what they do. Shoot. And so we all have mistakes. We all make mistakes. And
right.
so for me, psychological safety being the absence of interpersonal fear
No
is
way.
not a good definition. If I was going to give it a definition based off of this definition, I would say something to the effect of psychological safety is the result of everyone engaging in vulnerability based trust courageously.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Because it's really about having the courage to put ourselves out there to be rejected.
Yeah.
And if
Yep.
we don't do that, well,
Right.
let's look at this. In personal life, if we don't put ourselves out there and be vulnerable, we'll never get rejected, but we'll never get married.
Mhm.
We'll
Yep.
never have friends the way we want to. We'll never do anything we really want to do.
Yep.
We're always going to be doing whatever somebody else wants. In business, same thing. We're never going to have real good business partners. We're never going to have our ideas come to fruition. We're never going to have any of those things if we can't be vulnerable and put it out there for people to reject.
Yep.
We have to risk rejection in order to receive fulfillment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I look at this and I wonder, just going back to the basis of Amy Edmondson's comment that it's felt permission for candor. Candor can't exist in the with the absence of interpersonal fear. There's no way. Every time I'm candid with someone, there's a fear there. I have to overcome the fear in order to be able to speak.
Absolutely.
There's no way I'm ever going to be candid and not have fear sitting right there that this person is going to reject me. This person is not going to want to hear me. So yeah, I've got to push through that. Sure, there's got to be trust that the other person on the other end is not going to just crush me. That's going to help me be more candid, but it's not going to be an absence of fear.
Yeah,
I got to
absolutely.
push through that.
Absolutely.
There's no way there's an absence.
And I think that it's so important for people to step away from the labels and the buzzwords like psychological safety and put that into a real actionable process. And vulnerability based trust for me is a process that I help people walk through to understand how to become more and more vulnerable while at the same time becoming more and more courageous without having to fear what's going to happen. Because I tell you what's going to happen, you're going to build relationships.
Mhm.
You're going to have better results.
Yep.
You're going to have more buy-in from people. You're going to have more fulfillment in your life when you can get this idea of vulnerability-based trust. And again, I'm going to say it again, that it's not about the other people in the room. It's about being able to see yourself and know that you've done everything you can in that relationship, in those relationships, in that meeting, to put yourself out there so that people can see you, they can hear your ideas, they can understand your heart, they can understand what you're wanting vision-wise, they can understand that you have passion behind it. And if you don't put yourself out there, nobody's going to know that.
Yep. Yep. And the bottom line, you're not going to make good decisions without being vulnerable to actually have your ideas challenged, considered, people throwing out what's wrong with them and what's right with them. And in the end of the day, and I'm going to say this for leaders out there, any of you leaders out there, vulnerability begets vulnerability. And it starts with you. It starts with you. Your people will never be vulnerable if you're not vulnerable.
Right.
If you are invulnerable, they will be invulnerable. They will only go to the extent that you will go. And so if you want a team that is going to dive deep and be vulnerable enough to actually challenge ideas, to challenge and get to the right decisions so that you make the best decisions. You want them to hold one another accountable. You want to get to the best collective results. You need to embrace vulnerability.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. And I think that really when we start looking at psychological safety, what we really want to look at is maybe even changing that term and moving it away from psychological safety, but put it into psychological adventure or something like that. Let's get adventurous together. And camaraderie. I don't know. There's something better than safe. We don't need to be safe. We need to be entering the danger, as Lencioni talks about. We need to enter the danger. And you can't be entering the danger worrying about your safety.
Yeah. Well, and even in Amy Edmondson's original thing there was a sense of taking risk.
Yes.
You know, there's a riskiness to it. And again, we've moved to let's remove all risk. And so
absolutely.
We've totally skewed that into this. We want to remove all risk. We want to remove all opportunity for pain, all opportunity for discomfort. And all that it leads us into is a soft culture, which basically accomplishes nothing because we're just afraid and we're going to go to the least common denominator of whoever gets upset first. That's where we stop.
Whoa, sorry, you win. Right. And you know, we probably should be wrapping this up. But I will say that the idea of, you know, taking risk is not about being reckless.
Yeah.
It's about taking risk, putting yourself out there, not being reckless, not going and just, you know, throwing caution to the wind,
right?
But really stepping in and putting your hand up and saying, I'm not sure how this is going to be taken, but this is what I have to say at the risk of being canceled. I'm just kidding about that, but at the risk of upsetting people, this is for the betterment of the group. This is for the betterment of the project. This is the betterment of this meeting. This is what's in my head right now, and I'm not married to it.
Yep.
And when we can put stuff out there that way, you know, and it's funny because me and Christine actually talk about when we get into contention is like, okay, my head's telling me this. I don't know if I'm right.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's right. And so it's like, my head's telling me this. Not, I know you did this, but my head's telling me you're upset with me or something like that.
Yeah.
That way, she knows I'm getting a clear message, or I know she's getting a clear message from herself about this situation that might not be accurate.
Wow. That's helpful. Well, if you're out there listening, when you listen to this, when you watch this for us, we would love your feedback. We would love your comments. We want to be able to interact over this. And we hope we've done a good job here of representing both the original understanding of psychological safety, helping you understand what it means to be vulnerability-based trust, what that means and what that means to live that out and what that looks like, and what the concerns are with the modern versions of what psychological safety has become and why that can be a struggle. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time, 1 week from today. See you then.
See ya.